Without taking up any more time, I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Kelly Huang. Kelly has over 25 years of executive teaching and management consulting experience. You can find her full bio in the printed program. Kelly.
Thanks, Kara. Well, thanks everybody for joining me for this lunchtime workshop, and I especially want to give a shout out to Brittany and Kara and your team for hosting us. And I know the title is very aspirational, but in any case, from looking at San Diego as a hub for biotech, for technology, for wireless, that I'm seeing more and more opportunities for scientists like yourself to really take on a leadership position. And this is why we're all here, right? So let me get started and tell you a little bit more about why this is such an important topic for me to talk to you about. I think in my involvement with innovation and also leadership training, I really come up with some observations and tips I'd love to share with you today. So let's get started on that. I think, why is this so important? I know a lot of you are here, you want to hear more about, what is it about leadership? Why is it so difficult? And for me, this is personal because my father was a scientist, much like yourselves. He came from Taiwan and got his PhD in electrochemistry. And he was at General Motors Research for 20 years. And at the time, he was working on the hybrid battery technology. And so they had this technology in-house even back in the 90s and had the all-electric vehicle on the road first. It was called EV1. But now, if you look around, you see Teslas, you see Priuses, you see maybe a few General Motor Volts, right? So this was a key source of frustration for someone like my dad. They knew they had the technology in-house. They had the great ideas. They had the car brand to back it up, and yet that was not commercialized. And so I had a keen sense of that frustration that, a lot of you, I'm sure, have great ideas, would love to commercialize it, but what's it going to take? And so I think from, like I said, my innovation curriculum design and also in looking at leadership development, I'm seeing that there's kind of a consistent trend in terms of what leaders must do to take that first step and a foundational shift you have to go through. And some of you may even think, you know what? It's probably the people that have MBAs or people who are really good at sales that can take this on easily, right? And I'm here to tell you that MBAs and people in sales from my days back at IBM, they struggle with this too. So let me tell you a story about that. When I started in sales, I had these great managers, Bob and Sally, let's call them, and they were the go-to people, right? They knew how to get sales done. They had the key accounts. They were the people that branch managers would go to if there was a situation they needed to deal with or to really get quota over the line. But inevitably, because they were so good at sales, they were promoted into management. And so what happens then? What I see is that when they're managing the team, they're now not the people in front of clients, but rather sort of indirectly, right? They're working with their team to try to collaborate, to work on a team sales quota, to try to influence the people and motivate their team in order to get that team sales goal done. But then, because they're not in front of clients, inevitably what they try to do is try to compensate for that with their sales competence. And so the people that, were leading their teams would sometimes make the mistake of jumping in front of their team members who are trying to close a sale themselves, and instead of letting those team members do it on their own terms, they, sort of jump in and try to do it themselves or try to sort of usurp from their own team members. And that can really set up a team, an environment of distrust there, right? So we're going to talk more about that. How is it that the first-time leaders get tripped up by things like that? And also, some of you are founders, right? And I can only imagine what's coming at you in all kinds of directions. You're not having to be the chief scientist officer, the chief commercialization officer, the chief cheerleader, the chief human resources, and trying to hire your team as quickly as possible. So again, in that firefighting mode, where do I even start, right? I can imagine that your days are just filled with those kind of demands coming at you. So that transition I mentioned in terms of being the star performer into being a team leader, or from founder to actually become the CEO, I think there's some fundamental things I mentioned that I hope to share some of that observation and tips with you today to get you going. So on that journey into becoming that first-time leader, I'm imagining that if you were to take on any sort of big undertaking, let's say you want to climb Mount Whitney, the highest peak in California, or Mount Everest, what you might do is, because it's such a huge undertaking, right? You might want to talk to people who have done it before, or you might want to get a guidebook or a trail map or something that shows you what's it going to take. So what I'm here to offer you is that there is a book from Professor Linda Hill on this whole becoming the boss, or being the boss, sorry. That's the title of the book. Being the boss, which introduces these three imperatives: managing your team, managing your network, and managing yourself.